On behalf of the board, I want to thank Chancellor Money and his team for their fine hospitality. Our annual visit to UW-Milwaukee always includes new, exciting ideas and activities happening on campus. We're glad to finally be back, and we look forward to hearing and seeing more about the developments at UWM since our last visit. Chancellor Money, welcome. The floor is yours.
Do we have? Okay, thank you. Regent President Peterson, thank you. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your support. President Thompson, thank you for your support. I've gone through a little bit of a health challenge, and your support and all of your support during that period has been incredible. And I went to South Carolina over the weekend to get in shape for you. And I can tell you, the bike riding was great, and I'm ready. So bring the Regents forward. Here I am. So it's been wonderful, and I'm here to tell you today about some things that are happening at Milwaukee. And I'm also going to point out that everything that I'm going to share with you, you could look at each one of our campuses, all of my chancellor colleagues, as doing incredible things in their respective regions. I just happen to have the fortune to be able to welcome you to the first Regents meeting in person at a host campus since February of 2020, and it's a thrill. I hope you're all able to have a great time. We've been rolling out, looking forward to the hospitality, and I hope you've had everything taken care of to your satisfaction. I've got a lot of special requests, and just keep them coming. We'll make sure that you're taken care of. So with that as background, thank you all, Regents, for your support. And I know how hard it is to listen all day to individuals, so I'm going to try to keep things a little lively. I can take the mask off, and we can use humor a little bit more. It's not always easy to do, I've been finding, as we bring people back to have our masks on, so I'm really happy about this. I'm going to talk about some things that are different today than what you've been hearing. A lot of the focus, not just this afternoon, but in a lot of the meetings, has been a look back, how we've addressed the pandemic, and the successes that we've had. And those are momentous, those are frankly monumental. They're amazing in terms of what we've done. But I'm going to shift gears, and I'm going to have a couple of premises. I'm going to look ahead, and I'm going to take the perspective that, in fact, we haven't been as disrupted as we have seen changes in higher education actually accelerating many trends that were underway. And I say this because I want to position UW-Milwaukee in a context of why we exist. And I'm going to be perhaps a little provocative, but I'm going to share some things with you that try to answer that question about why we exist and why we merit greater support from the state of Wisconsin, building on the shoulders of Governor Thompson, building on your leadership, your brand ambassadorship, the substantive engagements that you've really led. And we couldn't have a better leader at the time in terms of so many things. So thank you, Governor Thompson, for that. So you've seen the title. The framework that I'll use today will be kind of standard in terms of, if you've been at my presentations before, I like to put the table of contents out there and talk about where we are today, recognize some of the challenges and opportunities, why we matter, and by extension, why UW System matters, why an investment in this particular campus is such an important investment in Wisconsin, how we're meeting the future head on, and then provide an opportunity for Q&A. So real quickly, UW-Milwaukee today. Many of you know this, but just as a reminder for those of you who do know, and if you're new to this table, in the fall of 2021, we had fall of 2020, I'm sorry, we had almost 25,000 students across 3 campuses. Most of those students come from Wisconsin. The balance are half international, half from other states, predominantly Midwestern states. About 5,400 graduates per year. Why that's important is that we have 200,000 alumni. In the last decade, 25% of them, or 53,000, have graduated in the last decade, and they stay here. Really important point. They stay here. They come from Wisconsin and they stay here for the most part. We have the greatest amount of diversity. I could spend a lot of time on that, and that's going to be an important point later. If you look at the UW System Accountability Dashboard, you'll see that we have about 6,100 students of color. We have the historic, for the last 7 or 8 years, top 25 to top 30 LGBTQ plus campus. We are military silver status. We just attained that in the last few months, up from bronze, and a number of other indicators of diversity in terms of international student, other important dimensions. I would point out, by the way, that the average UW system campus has 1,700 students of color compared to our 6,000, by far the largest number. And this is really important given where we are. The largest metro region, the most diverse campus with an access and research mission, and that's the next points there. We're unique in the state of Wisconsin, both in terms of our mission and how we've achieved that mission in terms of achieving top research status, at the same time being a community engaged status. Let's put some numbers on that. There's 4,700 campuses in the country that contend for Research 1 status. We're one of 131 with Madison. You have 2 in the state. It's pretty heady stuff. There's 335 Carnegie community engaged campuses out of those 4,700. We're one of those. It's pretty rare to have in a metro area this type of accomplishment. And I give our faculty and staff credit for that. The people who've come to Milwaukee and who stay in Milwaukee recognize our unique purposes and why we exist, which is a theme I'm going to come back to over and over. Some things you might not know about UWM. Before the pandemic, 15% of our classes were online. About 10,000 students, including 2,000 full-time. Well, that's pretty heady, but it's also important to know that a number of our programs are nationally top ranked. A lot of degree programs, 40 complete degree programs, a lot of students there. The veterans I've talked about in terms of more than any other. In fact, in a 6-state surrounding region, there's no campus that has as many students, 1,100 military veterans. Some of our programs, one that I taught in for over 20 years, have 40 to 45% of the entire program, the executive MBA program, 40 to 45% military veterans. Pretty amazing work there. It's not just about quantity and quality. We're the largest nursing program in the state of Wisconsin, but also it's about the quality. U.S. News & World Reports for all campuses across the country puts our doctoral program in the top 9%, our master's program in the top 12%. Governor Thompson talked about the retirement that's happening in nursing across the state of Wisconsin. We're already thousands of nurses short. Some estimate over 9,000 nurses short in the state today. One of the largest, most chronic issues that we're facing in terms of talent shortages. But the bigger issue is who's going to educate future nurses with all the nurses retiring. That's why the support from the state government is so important. So again, it's quantity and quality. The only American Sign Language program in the state of Wisconsin, film. Top 4%. There's 50 programs in the top 4% out of 1,350 in the world, and we're in that top 4%. I'm going to come back to this point later on because it's not just about 4%. It's not just one of the fastest growing majors on our campus. But what's interesting is that a few years ago, the Milwaukee Film Institute did a study, commissioned a study, and they found that the employment in film in Wisconsin is 5 times larger than that of guess which industry, which we're known for? Brewing. Phenomenal. And the growth rate, guess what it is relative to other industries? It's outgrowing by a 2 to 1. It's twice the employment rate and growth. It's pretty phenomenal. And the point I'm making about this is if you look at the proprietorship, if you look at the creativity and the work that's happening, a lot of it is based on UW-Milwaukee graduates. So it's not just filling a talent pipeline, it's actually creating industry. And that's a point I'm going to come back to over and over again because it's critical when you look at regional impact and you talk about what are the growth sectors. Go to the San Francisco Bay Area, go to Boston, go to Austin. And what's the heart of it? It's around industry and research, university collaborations. And collaborations is going to be a critically important theme in the conversation today. That's what's essential. So I just came back from Greenville, as I mentioned, South Carolina. And you want to talk about a lot of partnerships where you've got industry and education working together in very powerful ways, and it's an upward virtuous cycle. We've talked about Freshwater Collaborative. Governor Thompson and others today have talked a lot about this. The only dedicated school. I'd love to have you all there. I want to take you out on the Aging Niske to help you help me build support for the new research vessel. We have great fundraising along the way, but a little state or federal support would, of course, get it over the hump. So that's background. And I talked earlier about, I'm going to ask this question, why should you care about the foundation that I've laid? Why should you care? It's impressive and helpful, but that's all just background. Let's talk about the unfortunate, significant challenges that face this region and, frankly, the state. And I'm going to link Milwaukee to the state all the time throughout this, because like a family, we're only as strong as our least strong member. You're only as happy in a family as your least happy family member. That metaphor is very powerful. Many people have said, whether it's elected officials, business leaders, and others, as goes Milwaukee, so goes the state. And I will point out, as UWM goes, so goes Milwaukee in the larger region. And I'm going to make a case for that. So I'm going to make a lot of assertions and claims, and I can tell you I can back everything that I say up with data. I'm going to throw different points at you, and I'm going to back them up with data. Let's talk about the challenges and opportunities. So I like to situate why we exist in the context of, well, what's the environment? My background, as many of you know, is around strategic planning and managing organizations and leadership. And I look at, well, what are we facing? Opportunities and challenges, disparities. On the picture on the left-hand side, you see some colors, and they show on the north side of Milwaukee, largely African-American population, on the south side, largely Latinx, Hispanic, surrounded by a lot of the other populations, white and Asian primarily. The stats on the right-hand side come from some work that's been done, and primarily from Mark Levine, that was cited in some of the earlier work in some of the committee reports today. And what you can see, working from the bottom up, third highest rate of black incarceration. These are headlines that you've seen. It's not a lot of surprises. But let's put a number on that. It's 10 times the incarceration rate if you're white. Just to put that into reality, it kind of puts it in perspective. Among the worst black infant mortality rates, we've bounced between 1, 2, and 3 for the last 20 years. Second lowest black home ownership. That's been getting a lot of traction lately. If you're at the READY committee meeting this morning, you heard one of the things we're doing with our Northwestern Mutual Data Science Institute is focusing with MGIC on helping address that issue, putting a national center together to increase and address minority home ownership in this region, and then help with that nationally. I want to zero in just for a moment on that next one, working up. The ability of low-income black youth to climb the economic ladder. What Mark Levine and others' research shows is that if you're born poor and black in Milwaukee, by the time you get to your adult, early earning years, you're at 80%, you're 80% less of your white counterpart. Let's put that in perspectives. You graduate from one of our great institutions in the state of Wisconsin in your 20s, you make $50,000. That's pretty good for starting income. If you're born black in Milwaukee, the same trajectory, most of our colleagues are earning $10,000. Try making a living on those types of incomes. That's the challenges that we face. Now, why is that? Let's flip to the other side and look at data from the Hispanic Collaborative, which is part of Milwaukee Metro Association of Commerce. This is a slide from that deck. And you see 80% of the workforce is in 4 industries. Look at the middle column. You see where all those people are. Those are the 4 industries. They're all under $40,000 a year. In fact, a lot of those are in $12,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year types of occupations. Go to the far right, adjacent to those top 4 occupations, and this is the sad challenge. The demand is incredibly low. So some of these industries are probably not looking good for the future. I'm going to come back to the point in this slide because I'm going to talk about how we are addressing each one of these areas, but I'm just planting the seed right now. The Hispanic Collaborative, in conjunction with the work that we're doing with many community groups in the African American population in Milwaukee, are taking this challenge head on. And we're looking at this and we're saying we've got to use, guess what? Education as the pathway to address this issue. If you look at the occupations down below, where there's very little Hispanic or African American representation, we don't begin to have enough individuals in the high-demand, high-paid jobs. The path to that is typically a 2- and 4-year education degree. Other disparities, wrapping it up. On the left-hand side, you've got the Hispanic Wellbeing Index. On the right-hand side, you've got the African American Wellbeing Index. Look at the bottom. On the left-hand side, Milwaukee, 44th, African American, 50th. Here's a sad reality. In 2017, when this index first was created, Milwaukee on the Hispanic Index was 39th. It has dropped in 2020 to 44th. The new data will come out in 2022, and I can almost guarantee you we're not going to have climbed up. We're not going the right way. These indices, by the way, when we talk about well-being, there's 20 variables, and they include income, wealth, employment, and health, the big outcomes. Now, here straight from MMAC, another data point. And this says, okay, let's look at this in terms of prosperity rankings. On the left-hand side, you have Milwaukee, number 6 for white population. We're number 6. We're doing pretty well out of 20 or 21 metro regions across the country. But then if you look at African American and Hispanic, again, at the very bottom. This isn't like, I'm not clipping data here. It's not like there's 40 cities below this. This is 21 out of 21. That's the challenge that we're facing. So when we talk about disparities, here's another opportunity and challenge, depending on if you're an employer or an employee, depending on how you look at this. Talent availability. The theme across these 3 headlines is one word: shortage. That's the chronic issue. Even at the bottom, MMAC has an initiative called the Region of Choice, and that basically says if you're a member of that, of which we are, by 2025, we are going to increase our leadership of color by 25%, wherever you were at the 2020 benchmark. We're going to increase that, so we're doing this at UWM, and we're going to have 15% more talent of color overall, again, from our 2020 baseline. Well, that's great, but where are you going to get that talent? Circle back to what I said at the beginning. Who's got the largest diverse student population in the state of Wisconsin? It's right here. So we're an important part of that answer already. Again, I'm not even getting to the answer parts, but I'm showing you it's the challenge that we're facing. Education inequities. Earlier in the day, the phrase, "the system is broken," was used 2 times in the Education Committee. And I'm going to come back and point that out. You can talk about whether it's funding or you can talk about other areas, but we see continuing inequities. You may or may not know that Wisconsin has the greatest education gap. And I'm not talking about Milwaukee or Metro 7 now. I'm talking about the state of Wisconsin. Look at the math and reading scores in rural counties across this state. Look at STEM education across this state, and I can tell you we do not have, talk to the superintendents and they will tell you, we do not have enough STEM educators, and it's a real challenge, and it shows up in the test scores. It's a significant issue. Let me show you some data in the M7 region. This you may have seen before. I've used this. I chair the Higher Ed Regional Alliance. We put this data together for the M7 region. I'll talk about Higher Ed Regional Alliance if you're on the READY committee. I talked a little bit about that. But here's the average. It's not so easy to read. Just look at the numbers at the top. I'm sorry, the figures of young men and women. Take an average high school class. This is not just Milwaukee. This is the 7 counties, aggregating across the 7 counties. And here's what you see. Take 20 high school freshmen. 17 of them are going to graduate from high school. That's pretty good. The challenge is there's some yield or drop-off rate. Only 12 start college in the fall, 2-year or 4-year. And here's the sad challenge, and I'm going to tell you the saddest in a moment. The sad part is that 6 years later, only 5 of those students will have graduated from either a 2- or 4-year institution. But if you're black or brown, only 1, at most 2, of those students will be of color. That's the saddest part. We are simply not putting enough people of color successfully through our education system. Now, it doesn't just happen in college. It actually starts in early childhood education. And that's why the Milwaukee Succeeds partnership, of which we're one of the primary partners, is focusing on 2 things: African American male high school students, as well as early childhood education. It's that simple. Those are 2 critical variables. So those are important things. Competitiveness. Here's a huge opportunity for the region. Look at what CEOs are saying. Look at what leadership in this region is saying. We have been facing headwinds, but we've been facing headwinds for quite a while. Tight labor market, forced innovation. Are we going to rebound? Well, our manufacturing leaders, the CEOs, what are they saying? The challenge that's holding them back is not the demand, it's meeting the demand by overcoming supply chain issues. Are we innovating? Are we creating enough supply? Water, we've talked about a lot, but look at the headlines and you see these themes that come through. Part of it's inequities, but it's also huge opportunities, especially with a state like Wisconsin, which on the one hand has this great resource, but also has an industry and a history based on water in terms of industry, in terms of tourism, agriculture, so many different areas that the Freshwater Collaborative is looking at in terms of resolving freshwater issues. But it's more than just equity. It's more than just the lead pipe issues, lead in pipes and so forth. It's the politics and things like that. Again, these are just the areas that are out there. And finally, health inequities. And I do use that word deliberately in this area. Sometimes it's the veterans that are not getting treated well. Sometimes it's the elderly. Sometimes it's around racial issues and others. But there's a lot of significant inequities that are occurring. So let's stand back for just a moment from those challenges and point out they're bigger. Those challenges that I've just gone through are opportunities, if you're the optimist. They're much bigger than what any one institution can address. They're also not unique to just Milwaukee. Many of them are state and frankly regional or national. They require three things to address them. Number one, they need partnerships that are bigger than any of us. And so what you're going to hear about today and what you've been seeing in all our presentations and committee meetings so far is where we are engaging. It's a personality issue that we have. It's one to collaborate. It's one to work on issues, much like Governor Thompson always says, when we see problems, we want to solve them. And that's what we've got a history of doing. So it's about careful cultivation of partnerships. Second, you got to put your money in this, and you got to put your people and your time and effort. If you don't do that, you shouldn't be at the table, is how we look at it. And so we're in those places where we can really make a difference. And then we've got devoted, committed leaders. And I can tell you that when I say leaders, it's leaders at all levels. It's not just leadership from people who you've heard presenting. It's our faculty, it's our staff, it's why people came to Milwaukee, but more importantly, why they are staying. And I would put a metric on this. A number of us talk about this from time to time. And we think we've got about 80% of our faculty and staff who are the long haulers who have been here, that are dedicated to making a difference in an urban environment. We are fully engaged. You do not become a Carnegie committed and community engaged university without that kind of wherewithal. So that's what we're doing. How are we doing it? In the context of why, let me talk about why we exist. Let me talk about how we hit these issues head on. Disparities in education. These are just a few. Just like I'm telling you, every campus in this room could talk about how they're meeting the needs. This just scratches the surface. There's so many other things that are happening in the community, what we're doing. But here's four top level ones. With Parkside and Debbie Ford's leadership, who really helped bring us together, you can see this Moonshot for Equity in the top right. This is a substantial initiative that's called Moonshot for Equity for a reason. Those challenges that I pointed out earlier, UW-Parkside, UW-Milwaukee, Carthage College, and MATC have stood up and said, by 2030, we're not just going to reduce that gap by 3 or 5 or 12%, we're going to eliminate it. There will be, from our institutions, no difference. No matter what your background is, you're going to come to our campus and you're going to succeed. You're going to graduate and you're going to have paychecks waiting for you. That's the Moonshot for Equity. We're the first region in the nation to take that on head on. On the the top left, Higher Ed Regional Alliance, HERA. Some of you have heard me talk about it. It could have been RIA for the regional higher ed, but if you study your Greek mythology, you know that HERA was more powerful, but she was also about love and unity and bringing people and things together. So we like that, and there's 3 key goals. Number 1, college completion. Again, I salute Chancellor Ford and President Martin of MATC, who have led the completion goal. College completion goal is the foundation. Let's focus on students, let's get them through, and we have made a measurable difference across the M7 region. Second goal is how do you get college campuses working better together? We have the presidents and chancellors of every single 2-year, 4-year higher ed institution in the M7 region, representing over 150,000 students that are all on board and they're all committed to working together. So we've adopted, before the state of Wisconsin, before the technical college system did, we adopted transferology. We said we're the tail that can wag the bigger dog, and that's what we've been driving. Partnerships around badging, around online certificate programs, a lot of different energy. Third, employer linkages. Employer linkages are critical. It's not just to graduate students, it's to get them into employment, it's to get them into meaningful occupational careers. Go back to the challenges that I presented earlier. We've got to get students into occupations over $40,000. This is a chronic issue. Listen to most business leaders, and this is the biggest issue facing them. We're leaving too many people behind. So those are two big ones. Milwaukee Anchor Collaborative, we call this EDS and MEDS. The 5 biggest healthcare providers that include many of you who are in this room. Regent Grebe, I think about the importance of your organization and the 6 others that are part of this. We collectively spend billions of dollars, these 7 organizations, literally in terms of our procurement. But guess how much we spend in the Milwaukee area? It's pathetic. It's less than 1% of that spend in the certain zip codes that we're trying to revitalize. But employment, we're doing better. But those are the 2 goals, how much we buy and how much we hire from specific zip codes in this area. So this is a really important initiative to focus on that. Again, we've got the largest education and largest medical providers. And then, of course, M-Cubed, you've heard me talk about. You've heard me bring in superintendents of MPS and MATC, the president, both who happen to be Panthers, by the way, today, as we think about those institutions. And they're incredible in terms of the commitment that we've made 7 years ago to increase the talent pipeline, increase the number of students going from MPS to UWM this in any particular fall. So I'd like to share with you a young man who was our commencement speaker this year. His name is Darian Dixon. He graduated from the high school that's closest to us, Riverside High School, and he works as on the lead team for the Mars rover work. He's sending a lot of those images back to Earth. So getting him on tape is actually quite difficult because he's on Mars time. And that's everything that they're doing on this Endeavour exploration. So with that as background, why don't we hear from Darian about what UWM does?
Hello, everyone. Hi to the Board of Regents. Thank you, Chancellor Mark Monet, for allowing me to speak briefly here. Yeah, I know it's not live, but it's awesome to be able to speak here and represent UWM, and excited and happy to do it. I've been thinking a lot lately about my time at UWM, because I did the spring commencement speech recently, and some interviews and events with UWM recently with the landing of the Perseverance rover, and thinking a lot about UWM and my time there. I don't think I would be where I am today without the education I received at UWM. Life is a labyrinth of doors and windows and opportunities, and every decision you make and place you go impacts where you end up. And the amount of opportunities I got at UWM via the geosciences department, the amount of great connections that I made, friends that I made, awesome experiences I had with campus employment there, being a peer mentor and a campus ambassador for others. Just so much of that really culminated into this journey, really. I do not think I would be working on Mars rovers at all without my time at UWM. And for that, I'm immensely grateful. And for me, growing up in Milwaukee, UWM always seemed like such a big fixture in the community. My mom went to UWM, my uncle went to UWM, lots of family friends went to UWM. So as a kid, I always was exposed to UWM and thought highly of it. And it's honestly like full circle that I ended up a UWM grad and attended there and had such a great experience there. And I'm truly grateful to the university. Being African American from Milwaukee, there's a reality that sometimes we don't always have the same opportunities academically, financially. Milwaukee can be a tough place to grow up, and I definitely had some experiences that were rough. And to have such a big university in such a large, diverse city, serving such a large, diverse population is honestly fantastic. The ability to go to UWM for me and for several of my peers and friends I know really did change the circumstances of our lives. And that's something we'll always be very, very happy about and very proud of. It's kind of funny, I actually didn't attend UWM as my first university. I came out of high school and had this idea in my head that, I got to get out of Milwaukee, I got to leave home. And I went to a very small private school in Chicago, which I did enjoy, but I would come visit home a lot. I was really homesick, and I would come see my friends and hang out. And what struck me anytime I hung out with them, because so many of them went to UWM, was just like, it was a really bustling and diverse campus with so much going on. And people wore yellow. People wore their school colors. There was like school pride. We didn't really have that at the tiny school I was at. And I thought about coming home and looked into UWM and was just blown away by the amount of academic programs there were. I wasn't really set on the major I was doing at the time, but at such a small school, there wasn't a lot to pick from. And I'm looking at UWM on the website. I'm like, is this what college is like? There's this many things to choose from. So it became easy for me to make the decision to move back home and go to UWM after saying, I don't want to live in Milwaukee. I don't ever want to be home anymore. And UWM gave me a great education, allowed me to change my major to geosciences, which got me to where I am now, but also really changed my perspective of my hometown. I had that mentality that lots of people have, that their hometown sucks and they want to leave. And then I went to UWM, and now I'm the most pro-Milwaukee person ever. So I think UWM is just a fantastic place, and it's awesome to be able to just say great words about a great institution here, and happy and grateful to do it, and happy and grateful for everything UWM in my life.
Well, thank you, Darian. That was pretty neat, and we were thrilled. And you can imagine, if you see the youth today that wear NASA shirts, you can imagine how well received he was as a commencement speaker, even virtually, the comments that we've heard. And he tells a story in his commencement speech where his mother, who was his single parent, sat him down on the bed one day and said, "See these 2 pennies?" He said, "Yeah, that's all we have." They were that impoverished. She said, "I don't know how we're going to make it, but I have belief." And that was the theme, belief in himself and belief. It's just incredibly inspiring. It's one of the best commencement addresses we've had. So a really wonderful young man, and we're just so proud of Darian. He talked about something that we're proud of, and it's the number of academic programs and the choices, as well as the quality of those programs. And this slide speaks to that. So this is the transition to how we meet what I mentioned earlier, was the shortages, the shortcomings, the inability to meet the talent. You heard from President Thompson about the number of offers, the opportunities at the Madison Engineering Program. Let me just give you a snapshot of something that we've been tracking for several years now. And you can't read all of the data, but I'm just going to kind of walk you through what's on the top and what's on the bottom. The top is the types of fields. There's 4 buckets here. Those 4 buckets represent the fastest growing and highest demand job professions, occupations in the state of Wisconsin. 4 buckets. And you can see health and human services, business, computer science, engineering science, related fields. Those are the 4 fastest growing. They also happen to be the ones where pay, not surprisingly, is quite correlated. These are good jobs. At the bottom, here's what we deliver. So I presented this to Joint Finance, I presented this to WEDC, and a lot of employer groups, because this is so important. The bottom line is that 86% of UW-Milwaukee graduates go into these 4 buckets. And the data, the types of majors, you can see over 2,000 graduates in healthcare. Every year, remember that stat I pointed out earlier? 5,300 to 5,500 students every year. Think about the injection into the talent pipeline, a diverse talent pipeline coming out of UW-Milwaukee that goes into healthcare, business, and so forth. So you can see this, and you'll have access to the slides and see the actual reporting. But it's pretty impressive, and it's an argument from to the legislature in terms of why our campuses need additional support. Competitiveness, how are we addressing this? How are we addressing the real needs of industry, of employers, and the sectors? Well, I won't go through each one of these. You've heard in previous READY and other Regent presentations. But think about these 4 areas alone. And again, I could share with you a dozen centers and institutes, if not more. Lubar Entrepreneurship Center, which you've been in before if you've been a Regent for long. Tech Ed Frontiers, we talked about at the READY committee meeting this morning. Connected Systems Institute, you'll hear on the tour later tonight. And our NM Data Science Institute. These things have certain things in common. They're focused on the future. They're focused on giving students the skills that they need to create industries or to help existing industries. They're research-based, but they represent, importantly, powerful partnerships. And I talked again about that in our DNA. This really helps prepare the region, the state, and frankly, the world for the future. Water, you know, it's not just our involvement with Freshwater Collaborative. There's a lot of other things our faculty are doing. Top left, Helen Meyer. She's a professor in our Zilber School of Public Health. And she's looking at the unfortunate realities of guess where most of the lead pipe issues occur. Remember those zones that I pointed out earlier? The different color where you have the large populations on the south side of Hispanic, the north side, the black population. That's exactly where we have, and her research shows this and shows, unfortunately, what happens to, even at early education, just the challenging physiological effects of lead water, and lead in the water, lead in the pipes. On the right-hand side, you've heard about Professor Sandra McClellan before. Several of you as regents have participated in our Salon series where she was featured talking about her research, setting the stage for national leading institutions to participate with her research, finding early detection of COVID in wastewater and helping identify outbreaks long before people knew they were going to occur. That's just one example. Almost single-handedly, her research restored Bradford Beach. While you're here in Milwaukee, if you go down Bradford Beach, I can tell you 15 years ago, nobody went to Bradford Beach. Today, it is one of the top 10 beaches in the United States because of her research that helped figure out it's not just the storm water and it's not just the wastewater that pollutes the lake that creates the problems that we were having with the pollution, but in fact, it's a lot of the bird scat. And so Pooch Patrol came in. And this is the groundbreaking kind of stuff. And of course, in the middle, you're all hearing, unfortunately, too much about PFAS, the man-made chemicals, the forever chemicals. These are too pervasive in our lives, and we've got researchers that are finding ways to detect them and really help discover the kind of work there. And I'm purposefully not spending a lot of time on the Freshwater Collaborative because we've heard about this, and we do hear about it in every education committee. We're thrilled to have initial funding for it. It's not enough relative to what we've asked for. We want, as you know, $9 million in each of the 2-year biennial budgets. Getting the base of $2.5 million is a great start. And then finally, what we're doing with health inequities. I could share with you, we could talk all afternoon about the headlines, the types of substantive partnerships that we're doing with the medical college, working on mental health nurse practitioner residency programs, working on how you can have intelligent wound treatment, smart bandages, smart wound treatment. On the right-hand side, this young man heard about the work that our faculty are doing, and he wanted to make a difference. He jumped in, helping with, from the youth perspective, looking at the differential impact from an equity perspective regarding opioids, what the treatment plans are. So as I round a corner on this, I want to pull some of these threads together and make this point and argue that this investment that we continually seek support for, your support, what you've been doing, the types of things that we ask for all the time from the legislature, why we've met with over 60 legislators in the last month and a half, why I'm meeting with Senator Kuinga tomorrow, why I will continue this push like many of you are doing, is to make a strong statement for the state of Wisconsin. The more support we have, the more we can do. I'll share with you some data in a moment on this, but I want to really put this together. It's the talent pipeline is one front and center, which would be expected, but it's also how we solve problems through research. The types of things where we create industries in film, we strengthen the work in water, we take a look at manufacturing and we say, manufacturing of the 1930s, 70s, or early 2000s is not going to keep us competitive in a global world. redundant, global world, okay, we have to really think through this in both the creative and maintenance and strengthening side, the entrepreneurial work. So these are areas that are important, but there's also the moral imperative. The moral imperative to help our Black and brown communities be on a par with all the other communities that we have in our state. So building on this, what do we do for the region and state? I won't go through all of these, but just take a quick look, top 3 on the left-hand side. You could say this for all of my chancellor colleagues across the state. Our graduates have greater social mobility. They have employment opportunities, earnings, and home ownership. On the right-hand side, for communities and society, this isn't just for the individual. In fact, here's the data I want to share with you. Just a report that just came out, if you were hearing from Vice Chancellor Van Harpen this morning in Business and Finance, she talked about some information from this report from the state higher ed education executive officers. And this is a review of all the relevant literature and also some simulation modeling, and there's 3 takeaways. Number 1, the benefits to the state and to our communities far exceeds the benefits to individuals. So I sometimes have discussions with legislators, and they say, why should we ask a taxpayer who doesn't have a degree to support the students who are getting degrees? Because those students are going to make a lot more money. Why should we help them? The number 1 answer is, guess why? Your communities have higher tax bases. You have much stronger economic development with higher education. You can go through a number of arguments, but the data are incredibly compelling for you're making an investment in the state. And if you have further questions about that, look at states that are strong in terms of the regional economy, and their education levels are generally considerably higher than the state of Wisconsin. So that's number 1. Number 2, if we want to meet employer needs, think about whether it's WMC, MMAC, think about your local chambers. What are they telling you? Every single CEO. I wrote an article as the chair of Higher Ed Regional Alliance, and I said, ask 9 out of 10 CEOs what their number 1 problem is. It's about talent. It's about having the right talent at the right time. People like the article, and I got a lot of positives, but I get these side comments. So who was that one CEO who said talent isn't the number 1 issue? I mean, it's that chronic. It's that vexing. We're not going to fix the talent pipeline if we continue on the trend that the state of Wisconsin has been on. For the last 11 years, we have had a disinvestment, and I can show you the data that shows you the trend line relative to other regional public universities in the country. Our trend line has been significantly challenged. So number 3, this is the big one, back to Milwaukee in particular in this region. If we want to close equity gaps and address the real vexing issues that I've laid out at the beginning, state support is the biggest thing we can do to increase that. In other words, we cannot do it alone. We had a record campaign, capital campaign. Many of you came over and helped us celebrate a year and a half ago. It was wonderful to receive $250 million. That is not enough. We're going to have an announcement in the next day or 2 about a huge gift, and it's $5.75 million, and it's focused on scholarships. It's from the Froedtert Trust. It's for scholarships specifically for people from Milwaukee and primarily disadvantaged, historically underrepresented in healthcare professions. It's really neat. MATC is getting 5.75, so together over $11.5 million for MATC and UWM. This is powerful, but I can tell you it is not enough. It will not scratch the surface. So look at it the other way around. So if there were no UWM, a prominent CEO in this region said, if UWM didn't exist, we'd have to invent it. We're putting over 5,000 students a year into the talent pipeline. He actually employed over 6,000 of our students over many years. The saw cuts both ways. That's the point why I put the red on the slide deck. The saw cuts both ways is an important point. If you invest and you have prosperity, great. But if you don't invest, you're on the downward spiral. And we're all spiraling. And the question is, are we spiraling up or are we spiraling down? And if we don't have greater investments, we will not have these types of outcomes. So you know this, but to reinforce it, what we want to do and have been doing is addressing and solving the needs. We're fixing problems. To do it regionally and across the state, here's what we need. GPR, we're underfunded, and I make that argument, I think, on that side of room, every single one of my colleagues would join me in saying that. It's a necessity. The accessibility for more Wisconsinites is critical, and then support for Freshwater Collaborative. So those are the things that we're going at the legislators head on talking about. And then, of course, on the capital budget, the obsolescence of our buildings. While we have been identified as UW-Milwaukee starting in 1956, as you can see from the logo on either side of the room, the history of this campus actually goes back to 1849, and the buildings are even this one, which we got support for $40 million, you will not see anything that really addresses much of the actual needs. It's more renovation, HVAC types of things. So the types of projects that are on our current budget and recent budgets include things you've heard about, you've supported these, so I won't go through them in any detail other than just to mention them. The Northwest Quad, that's the old Columbia St. Mary's, and that's front and center, our #1 request with the legislature today. Chemistry building, we're breaking ground soon. Sandburg residence halls, we need some more help to finish those. And then for the new boat, we need a better dock wall, but even for the existing boat. So this is an $8 million project, the smallest of those that are mentioned. Now, what are we doing? What are we doing to merit further investment? Many of you heard in the Education Committee, our provost and team talk a little bit about the work that we're doing on 2030. We commissioned a group back in 2019. We saw the trends that were heading our way, the fact that we're in a quite disrupted world, and we put together a team that actually had over 100 people called Think Tank 2030, and we've generated through a lot of work, a 175-page report that recognizes that the pandemic really accelerated a lot of things. Higher ed has been disrupted. So no surprise to you, these are trends that you might have seen some of the data in reports earlier today. We're running out of teenagers, I oftentimes will say. That's the reality demographically. But we also have lesser funding. And these are just two of the big challenges. There's many, many other areas as well. So we put together a blueprint, and it's got 8 priorities. The student centricity and revising the curriculum to both help students get through faster and to have a radically welcoming orientation. The inclusion and diversity, which we have been doing, and we've been on a tear since I've been in this role since 2014 to magnify our support on that. Aligning and engaging the workforce, not just the academic side, but our entire employee base. The provost has talked about the reorganization. So we built a campus going back to the 50s and 60s, around 15 schools and colleges. What is the right number? What's the right way to do that? We're actually consolidating, and by this fall, I suspect we'll have the tracks laid for a considerably more focused, smaller number of schools and colleges for efficiencies and effectiveness. The research infrastructure, not just to maintain, but to strengthen and build. And then finally, second to the last, updating the budget model to support this work, and then growing our endowment. From today, $206 million, we want to grow that endowment to $500 million. So that's the focus of our next campaign. So in summary, pulling the final thoughts here together, we have a unique responsibility in the state. We own it. So it's not just words on paper, it's not just in the charter and the mission of the, literally, and you know, the way that UW system is built. We own this. We're the largest economic hub in the state, in Milwaukee, and we, I hope, have shown you that we respond innovatively. We have put a lot of our effort into the issues to solve issues around employment, education, economic development, public health, water, and beyond. We're really in this community to make a difference. We can be much more effective if we have greater support, and in particular for our Black and brown communities, which have been, unfortunately, left behind in so many different ways. These are our areas that we focus on, and we want to make up for some of the lost ground that has happened. We want to help the state bounce back and be strong. To do that, we need your help. We can't do it on the resources that we have. I don't know if we'll be able to continue at the levels that we have, honestly, in terms of the budget cuts that we've had to, and it's not just because of the pandemic. But it's your support, your political persuasion, your influence, your advocacy that have made a big difference. So on a final note, just at a personal level, this was not an ordinary year for any of us. For us at the system level, for you as regents, at our campus, and certainly for me personally, given what I've gone through. I had my 32nd anniversary at UWM this year. In fact, I'm just finishing it, and I like to joke, I look forward to the next 32. I just don't know if they'll all be here. With that said, I do love this campus, and I think I love Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin. I'm convinced, and many individuals, and I'm glad to say so many of you are with me on this, know how important we are. And I say that about Milwaukee. I say that about all of our UW system campuses in terms of what we represent in our respective regions, what we represent to the state. And it's with your help, your continued support, that we can really make a difference. We can take these initiatives, be explicit, own them, and really make a committed difference. And we'll help the state of Wisconsin in a much greater way than what we've done before. So thank you for your engagement. I know how hard it is to listen to, my goodness, it's another afternoon speaker after lunch, but you've really been engaged, and I'm so grateful for your support. Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them and if time allows. Regent Peterson.
Thank you, Chancellor Mone. Excellent, passionate, as usual. Glad to have you back.
Thanks.
Thanks for hosting us. Questions of Regents for Chancellor Mone? Regent Klein.
Thank you, Chancellor Mone. Always, as Regent Peterson, Chair Peterson said, always a pleasure to have you here. I think I speak from the heart from those who are from the Milwaukee region and from the business community about how vitally important what you are doing is for the UW system and for Milwaukee specifically. I've come to believe that the UW system is the greatest way that we can impact the economy of this state. I think I always knew it, but I think sitting on this board now for 5 years, I see the Wisconsin idea in action, all of our campuses, but I see it very personally in action in Milwaukee. We don't feature the Freshwater Collaborative every month at the Education Committee because it's all about just fresh water. It's because the collaborative idea was hard. It's hard fought. It's hard, and it's exactly where our system needs to be. The partnership component is huge, and it allows us to be more efficient, to deliver a product that is better and competes nationally. And what you've done on the achievement gap, I mean, I've been with you and I've watched, and that's hard work. And it's the most important work that I believe we can do as the system is to close that gap. I was horrified when I joined this board. I realized that certain kids, if they don't have the right preparation, will spend, 6 years in college rather than 4. And think about the ability to graduate, the ability to, the amount you have to pay in extra tuition. You get tired, you leave. You guys put the work in to try to get at that, so there were co-requisites and people didn't spend 6 years in college. That they were brought up to the ability to compete in the classwork quickly and efficiently, and I've watched that, and it's hard work. Putting all these partnerships together, hard work. And to me, it's not we heard Tim Sheehy about maybe a year ago or before COVID talking about this important thing for Milwaukee. And so for me, it's heartfelt, and it's a moral imperative, but it's more than that. It's an economic imperative for our state. I think I always say, and maybe this is too shorthand, and Drew will probably kill me for saying it, but I always say, let Madison be Madison and put funds into Milwaukee if you're trying to actually propel the economic environment of this state. And so anything we can do to help, anything we can do to propel these initiatives, I stand ready to support you and your campus, because I think this is so incredibly important. So thank you.
Thank you, Regent Klein, and I appreciate you being on the journey with us. You've seen what we're doing. It's not an overnight change. These are issues that have been in place for decades, and we want to accelerate how quickly we can address them. And it's about substantive change, meeting students where they are, but it's also about cultural change. And that's a really important component that we've been working on. And I'm really happy to say it's an easy sell on this campus, but it is changing behaviors. And that's what we're quite excited about. And we're going to make a bigger difference than what we've made in the past, even if our footprint is a little bit reduced on the budgetary front. Thank you. Regent
Bechtel, then Regent Cologne.
Thank you for that presentation, Chancellor Mone. And I want to build on my colleague Regent Klein's comment about investment and support that we can give as regents to UWM and also our friends in the state legislature. So one of your colleagues today during Business and Finance Committee, Mark, went through a couple of key charts for us. And for instance, when we look at low-income undergrads, your student body is almost at 35% of your student body is low-income undergrads. When you look at the GPR per student, you drop down, you're below Madison, and you're just about where the comprehensives are at about $6,200 or something like that. So your GPR to student ratio is probably below where it should be. Your tuition is a little above the comprehensives, a little behind Madison, a little shy of $10,000. Then the average unmet financial need. So again, we've got a high density of low-income undergrads facing tuition, facing a lower GPR per student dollar figure, and therefore the average unmet financial need runs at about a $10,000 burn rate per student. So what we're doing as a system, what we're doing here at UWM, not by anyone's intention, I'm sure, is that we are taking low-income undergrads, having them go through this system, and we are saddling them with what? A higher debt ratio than probably our other campuses. Right. What can we do, and maybe this is an ongoing discussion, but what can we do as regents to improve that picture? Because I agree, Regent Klein, there's a moral imperative, there's an economic justice, there's an economic talent pipeline type of issue that's all running through here. So what can we do as regents? What could we ask of our friends in the legislature to not continue on this path? Is my question clear?
Very clear, and I think the answer with respect to, UW as a system, and I want to be very respectful as I say this, I think if we could find extraordinary investment, let me give you an example. In the state of Ohio, Cleveland State today is receiving an additional $20 to $30 million. It's not a reallocation from other schools, and I want to be very respectful. We have a pie. And so the easy answer would be, well, give Milwaukee more, right? I mean, but I want to be respectful of the incredible things that are happening in every campus that really does have a set formula. Can we get an additional investment? In the state of Ohio, they have said for Cleveland State, that is where they have the largest number of students of color, and they have a proven track record of having been able to get students through and graduated into careers. That's an example. Washington State had another approach where they looked at going where they went to the highest paid occupations, and they said, these are, my goodness, in the GAFAM companies, if you're familiar with that acronym, that's the Google, Amazon, Facebook, so the high-tech companies, including Microsoft. I can't forget Microsoft with my star alum, Satya Nadella there.
We're always thinking about it.
So these companies went to the state, and they went to the governor and the legislature, and they said, we will take on a higher tax burden if you will take that money and funnel it into STEM fields and those that are going to help our tech sectors. Let's look at that type of thing and talk about how we can help invest in the University of Wisconsin, and then look at, and this is, in a similar vein, Governor Thompson has been arguing for the expansion of the Promise type of funding. If we could get that, that's going to help all our students, particularly those that are underrepresented. So those are some quick examples of things that I think are yes pluses. They don't take away from anything that we've currently got, but boy, if we could get some specific initiatives. And to your point, Regent Bechtel, this isn't an answer and a solution today. It's going to take a lot of conversation. It's going to take some compelling arguments that I think can be made very effectively if we look at other states. Independent of politics, this is what's the right thing to do for building strong economic muscle, for really building the talent, for building industry and so forth. So I love your question. Thank you.
Regent Cologne, and then Regent Weatherly, and I believe Regent Walsh.
Thank you, President Peterson, and thank you, Chancellor Mone, for your great presentation, the great work that you're doing in Milwaukee, and the benefits that your good work has on the rest of the state. I also want to echo my colleagues about believing that Milwaukee is the economic engine of the state. When you do well, when Milwaukee does well, the rest of the state is going to benefit. So an investment in Milwaukee is an investment in the state. I want to echo that. Also want to say that I just want to ask you about your vision and desire to become a Hispanic Institute. What do you believe are the benefits there, and what are the resources you need to make that happen?
Thank you. Great question, Regent Colon. First and foremost, it's the growth of the state. It's the smart thing to do because of where our students are at in terms of the demographics. We've got a wonderfully growing population, and why would we not want to serve more students? And you can also see from my data the challenge, and so I work with Nancy Hernandez, and when I work with Francesca at the HPGM and Hispanic Collaborative, we have the data that shows we are holding back this region by not having more Hispanics at UW-Milwaukee and MATC and the pipeline. So we want to help in terms of bolstering this region's economy by helping a large population. For the benefits that accrue to UW-Milwaukee, we're at about 13% right now. The goal, if you don't know, is to become 25% undergraduate Hispanic. That's the goal, to become an HSI, or Hispanic Serving Institution. The benefits that accrue is that our students will get more federal financial aid and more readily, and more support. So it's not that it's a benefit that comes to us as much as our students benefit. It lowers essentially the cost of education the more we have. So this is a federal program that's been in place for some time. The support that we need to work on that, and I've been very careful on our campus as we've undertaken the HSI initiative, is we don't want to single out and provide support, whether it's additional advisors or recruiters, just for Hispanic students, but we want to do the same thing for African American, for our indigenous students, and for our Asian American students. So we want to rise all boats. So we've been increasing our multicultural support in a lot of different ways and looking at our identity centers and other things. How can I accelerate that? What would I need? It would be similar to how I answered Regent Bechtel. We are underfunded for the mission that we're serving. Per student basis, per student dollars, look at the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, look at some of the other data that are out there. On a per student basis, we're trying to be a research one, we are a research one, but at the same time, we are serving an access mission. So it's really more about opening our doors to serve almost all the students who apply here. And that means we have a higher burden in terms of the support services, and it's been on the backs of a lot of really hardworking people to have achieved that. So I'm happy to have further conversation and talk even more specifically about where we're at and what we can do to bolster that work more.
Thank you, and very happy you're pursuing that. I think it's a great thing for Milwaukee and the region.
Thank you.
Chancellor Mone, earlier in your presentation, you had a slide that talked about effectively, if not for Milwaukee. And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to add one more, which is a personal example. That is, if not for UWM, I don't think my company would exist. We started 4 years ago. I started with a UWM grad who learned all of his entrepreneurial skills at UWM. And while I'm not sure we would have started the company if we wouldn't have met 4 years ago, I'm certain we wouldn't have gone through COVID without his leadership and what he learned while he was here at UWM. And another example that goes with that is 3 years ago, I got a call from Brian Thompson, who many of you know, who said, this is before I was a regent, I have an incredibly talented student. She's looking for a job, you should talk to her. We hired her. Initially, she managed our Milwaukee market. We promoted her again and again, and she ended up being the COO of the company, allowing me to do much less work and allowing her to manage it. And just recently, she was admitted to the Oxford MBA program and is attending there in August. So the fundamental people in my company came from UWM. So I guess I will say it. So if not for UWM, there would be no Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Weatherly. Great testimonial.
My question was answered. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Other question? Regent Jones, deep down there.
Yes, Chancellor, thank you very much for that presentation. Let me ask, where is our collective legislative representatives on these sorts of issues? And you have a bigger footprint than you did a couple years ago, but they would seem to be key to take up these sorts of issues. And I know you've probably been in touch with them, but without going too deep into it, just to characterize our support.
You know, like you, when you talk with legislators, they're very polite, very respectful. Many of them are graduates of UWM, and certainly many of them are graduates of UW system campuses. And, you know, I think the conversations that we've been having are, while polite, I think there's a collective sentiment that is hard right now to find from the legislative leadership and the majority party, some of the increases in support. And this is what Governor Thompson, I think, you know, he's leading the way in terms of the meetings that he's having with JFC chairs, with JFC members. And I think that's the answer to that, is that we're fighting a challenge that has been long in the making. It's not just today's legislators. It's ones that have been saying collectively, we have to fill that. But I do think that for us, politically, the value of the UW system is like water in the sense that it should be apolitical. It should be something where we talk about economic development, we can talk about the moral imperative, but ultimately it's all those things together that really make a difference. And so how I come at this is I say, if you're an elected official, you should care about the UW system and the health of the state, because we're linked together. We make that difference. If you're an employer, you should care about the UW system because we're your best source of talent at a most affordable price. And then for all of us, you, our campuses, and I think all of us, there's the moral imperative, how we're leaving so many people behind. I don't care what your background is, we're not able, without additional support, we're making it very difficult to afford college and to help lower those barriers to bringing people together. So it's a long answer. I apologize, but that's the characterization. Nobody's to my face saying, why should we do this? But there are some who kind of hint at, I don't know if we'll be able to increase the funds, because the short answer right now is there's this mindset, and I think Governor Thompson can speak to this even more clearly, where a lot of legislators feel that today the federal funds that Governor Evers has should be spent before we allocate more tax dollars, because you guys have a lot of that funding. And we continue to try to point out two things to them. Number one, the federal funds are earmarked. They're already 50% to the students for the most part, but they're earmarked for specific COVID expenses. And the other aspect is they're one-time funds. They're not base budget. So those are the issues that we get into.
Other questions or regents? Chancellor Mone. Okay, seeing none, I'd just say, Mark, you know, it's always so helpful for us to appreciate the kind of influence that you're trying to have, the kind of impacts that you're working with your business community. You know, I've hearkened back to when we were doing the All in Wisconsin tour here. I mean, the room was packed, and you have so many evangelists for the campus. This notion of priorities and what it is that we can collectively do to get to yes is, you know, been a frequent refrain each and every time we're here. And I just got to personally thank you for being so tenacious, continuing to assemble people that deeply care about this, different constituencies, to keep trying to put the pressure on to improve Milwaukee, because as Milwaukee goes, the state goes. Let's give Chancellor Mone another round of applause.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.